I know that some of you are anxious to get started on our feather lesson, so I'm going to go ahead and post the first one tonight. What I have done here is I've drawn out a 4-inch border. I don't know if you can see these things, so if you can't, just try to imagine, or you can always send me an email and ask me questions. But I've drawn out a 4-inch wide top border and my 2 side borders. Now, when I start to make my feathers, what concerns me most is to get my corners kind of symmetrical. I'll find something that will give me a curve that I'm happy with. And for a 4-inch border, I like this full 2-inch roll of painter's tape, 3M painter's tape. Now to get that lined up, I will take the 45-degree line on my ruler and I will lay it across this bottom line of my top border, so that it intersects right here on this seam where the side borders meet the top borders. And I will just draw a line. Can you see that? I hope. And then I will take the center hole here and kind of center it right over that, and I'm going to make a mark that goes from that diagonal line to the end of the diagonal line. Okay, I'll do the other side and then I'll see if you can see that one. Line up your 45-degree line on the bottom seam here and intersecting where the top border and the side borders meet. And then just draw a line. If you're using actually on your quilt, you're going to use a water-soluble marker or a white chalk pencil, whatever you're comfortable using. And then I'm going to lay this roll of tape so that the center hole is about right in the center. Now the feathers that we're going to be making are feathers that you would just make on an everyday quilt. These are not necessarily show quilt feathers, but it's just to get you started. And so now what I'm going to do, of course the border on the quilt is longer than this, but I'm just going to freehand in some humps and curves, okay? For this one, since it's pretty much easy to find the center, which would probably be about like right here, I'm just going to do something like this, okay? It's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect on your quilt unless you take the time to do all the math and figure it out, which I'm not going to do. And then I'll just come down with this one kind of similarly. Okay? Now, that is your spine line for your feathers. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start actually drawing the feather. I'm going to start, some people find that it's easier to go one direction than the other direction, and probably in the beginning we all find that. So if you are more comfortable just going from left to right or right to left, go ahead and do whatever works for you, but your ultimate goal needs to be able to do in both directions. I just had to go back and look and see if you could see what I'm doing here. Now, on your quilt, don't forget that you've got a seam allowance here. When you're making your feathers, you do not want them to go right to the very edge because you still have to put your binding on and you don't want to cover up the tips of your feathers. So if you need help or you're afraid you're going to forget, just draw in your seam allowance, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to practice making the feathers on paper. You're going to start with the bottom of your feather and you're going to go out and you're going to come in. Now, I can actually quilt them better than I can draw them. You want to kind of just a little bit trace up that line and go back out. And you just want to keep making them. And you'll see as your curve goes away from where you're making them, your feathers are going to get bigger, and it goes back out towards, it's going to get smaller. Now for the corner, you also need to make a pencil line on your quilt, diagonal line, because that will kind of help you keep the feather going in the right direction. Now just make the feathers until you're comfortable making them on the quilt. Now, can you see what I've done here? I will take some still pictures and they'll be on the blog. There are all different shapes of feathers. Just get to the ones that you're comfortable with. Now, I'm just going to draw a line right here in the middle to show you some that you might want to try to avoid. Sometimes you'll see them and they're going out like this. If they're just kind of going too far out, they need to have a little gentle loop. And whatever you're comfortable with and whatever you think, if you're making feathers and you're happy with them, that's fine. But I think if you're doing something that looks like this, you might want to practice. And you can see what it needs is it needs to come in a little bit and then go out and then come up and come down in the center. But just work on them until you're comfortable with them. Draw them out, just start at the base and go up. Now as you're coming back towards your spine, instead of coming straight into your spine, try to come down a little bit at an angle, and that way it's easier to hit that line, because if you're coming straight at it, it's so easy to go over it or not stop in time. So as you're doing it, try to come down into your line, okay? And then as you're getting into where there's a curve, your feathers are going to take on a different shape. And as you get up to the curve in your corner, use that line to kind of keep, because it's really easy to, when you come to a corner, to have your feathers start taking on weird shapes, and then you end up with them, you know, not going the right direction. So just use that corner line to guide you as you're doing it. Now, if these are your first feathers, they are not going to be perfect. And I would be amazed if they would even look decent. Mine sure didn't. But practice. You're never going to make pretty feathers if you don't make some ugly feathers and practice from there. Now, once you get all of this side done, and you may have to get out another sheet of freezer paper or whatever you're doing. And I know that I'm drawing these right up to the line. If this was an actual quilt, that would not be very good, because that would be my edge and not my seam line. Once you get done, you can either come back around if you're comfortable doing that, or you can come back to the side where you started and start making them from there. Now, if you want to make some feathers, when you get into a center corner, did you see what I did? There's so many marks here. Let's see if I can get some of those off. You're coming in, and a lot of times when you're coming into the corner, you may need to make a shorter one. And then when you come back with the next one, it can kind of come over and like stand on its head or something like that there. Let me go to the other corner that I haven't done yet and show you what I did there. You're making your feathers. And right in here, you might need to make a smaller one. And then when you come out right there, you can make a bigger one. See how I'm going down to the line? I'm not going across the line. Okay? Now just practice making some feathers. And like I said, there will be some still shots on the blog. And then later on this afternoon, I'm going to show another video of the actual quilting process where I have the quilt marked. And you'll see what I'm doing. But in the meantime, just make some feathers on paper. And also, I will show you in the still shots, you've probably already read the blog this morning or tonight, that the how I have my quilt loaded, and I will tell you why I loaded it that way. And I'll also talk about the thread choices with some still shots. Okay? There will be another video posted this afternoon.